Line Extra, your weekly Galway GAA podcast with Ollie Turner and Sean Walsh in association with Seymours Loughrea.
Welcome on in to Over the Line Extra. It's a Thursday as we look forward to County Hurling final weekend. More of that in a few moments as we introduce our two guests to look forward to the clash of St Thomas's and Loughrea. But first things first, Sean. 4 Galway clubs we previewed last week going into Connacht Club Championship action, and 4 wins.
Unbelievable, and all better than the rest, as they say, and all go forward again. Kilkerran and Clonberne, a big long journey ahead of them for an All-Ireland semi-final, but they look to be in a very good position. Clifton did the business, looked after it in decent style.
Correct.
Dunmore, your native area now, got over the line and looked well as well, but the performance of the weekend had to be Mike Cullen.
I'd say nationally the performance of the weekend was probably Mike Cullen. Talk about laying down a marker. And we talk about laying down markers because whether you like it or not, and we talked about this last week, Sean, as well, with Cyril Farrell and the week before with Cyril, about other counties looking in at Galway now. Absolutely. Because we're at the business end. And I'm sure there's a lot of counties going to be looking in at the Galway hurling final because whether you like it or not, Galway clubs have had a huge say in the All-Ireland club title race over the years. And so for St Thomas's and Loughrea, it's a step closer. It's one match away from an All-Ireland semi-final, and with the Ulster champions to come in a semi-final, a lot of people are licking their lips thinking this is a huge opportunity for one of these two clubs in the broader context.
Well, the other thing about it, and I think I heard someone today describe it as a potential All-Ireland quarter-final in its own way, and it's probably something that, semi-final before Christmas, that when Galway does go to the 16-team championship and when we see the alignment eventually of the competitions, you will see probably Galway eventually going into Leinster Club Championship, if that's the structure that's going to be there.
Well, it would make sense, Sean, when you look at how easy Ballyhale have it, with respects, beating the Westmeath champions. They've Naas up next in a couple of weeks in Croke Park. I mean, that's going to, you'd have to think, be...
It is, but then the flip side, you look at Munster. I mean, there's a Mountwater and Ballygunner taking on the Piercy is a huge game as well. But I think, from early January last year, one of the games that stood out, it was one of the first games of the season, it has stood out all year, was that Ballyhale St Thomas's game. That is a litmus test and an indicator of how close a Galway club team is to the very top of the club championship. So I think, the bonus for Loughrea and St Thomas, they're not thinking about that at all this week. They have enough on their mind, but the winner will be a player in the All-Ireland Club Championship.
We have two guests who certainly know all about Loughrea and St Thomas's. We've got 2 former inter-county managers, one man who's just barely dusting down the gear bag, having left the Dublin scene. Mattie Kenny, a very good evening to you. And also we've got John McIntyre, the former Galway manager, of course, who's involved as the Connacht Tribune sports editor for more years, John, I'm sure, than you'd care to remember. But you certainly remember 10 years ago, the last time that these sides met in a county final. A little bit of past history, if you want to call it that, between the clubs. But how excited are you about the clash of Thomas's and Loughrea this Sunday?
Well, first of all, I think it's great that Loughrea are back in a county final because it brings a bit of freshness to it. They haven't been in one for 10 years since that final against St Thomas's a decade ago. And, we've seen Lee Mellows getting their chance in county finals. We've had Clarenbridge there, we've had Gort, we've had Clarenbridge. And I know Loughrea were getting to an awful lot of county finals, 15 years ago, around that time, some epic battles with Portumna. But this is basically a new team. I know you still have the likes of Johnny Cohen, Jamie Ryan, Neil Keary, Paul Hooban, who played or who were around for that 2012 final. But the rest of these Loughrea players are novices to county final day. And they're a well-supported club at the best of times. And I think they'll bring a crowd to Pearse Stadium on Sunday.
Is John, the intensity that they've brought, have they any chance of stopping the juggernaut that is St Thomas's?
Well, of course they have, Ollie. If you go back through St Thomas's county final record and their score lines, bar one day against Lee Mellows where they beat them 9 points. Every other final they have won by 2 or 3 points. So there hasn't been a lot in it. But on the other hand, then it shows the temperament of these St Thomas's players, that in these tight big day games, they're able to find a way to win. They don't do panic. They're very composed. They have a winning pedigree, and they really have an admirable big day temperament. And if it's going to be a very tight game and it's coming down to the wire, you'd probably be putting your house in St Thomas's to get over the line. But everybody thought that they were in trouble in the group stages, that they were in decline when Turlockmore gave them a big beating. Some of their group form wasn't exceptional, even though they were winning their games. But since that loss to Turlockmore, they've really turned it around. I think it helped them to refocus. They mightn't have thought it at the time. It's probably the best thing that happened to them. And, their track record in county finals is exceptional. I come from a club in Tipperary, Loughrea. We've played in 5 or 6 Tipperary senior hurling finals starting in 1924, and we've lost them all. St Thomas's, on the other hand, have played in 6 Galway senior hurling finals, and they're victorious in every one of them, and that's an incredible record. And that's it's an intimidating record for teams who are playing them. But I'd imagine that Loughrea are coming into this final. I don't think they see it as a bonus for them in any shape or form. They have been building for a couple of years. They're undefeated in this year's championship. I liked what I saw against Clarenbridge. They were very pleasing on the eye, and their pace about the field could hurt St Thomas's.
You talk about, Sean, the 6 they've won since 2012, but the 4 they've lost, they could easily have won as well. They were knocked out before the final, obviously, but this could be like a ridiculous kind of 10 or 11 in a row job, really. Yeah.
Now, in fairness to McIntyre, he did play well himself in 24 for Loughrea in that first final, in fairness to John there. But look at 12 they won, 13, 14, 15 they will have regrets. They also had a lot of injuries. 16 they won. They have regrets about 17. So you could be talking about, we've all lived through the era of Athenry, Portumna, Sarsfield, say Corofin in football. They could be on the crest of something even bigger than that. But I think John is so right in so many things he said there. But the one thing I think that really sticks out this year for me for Thomas's is they didn't have David Cherry all year. Shane Cooney's only making a comeback now, coming into, got a few minutes at the end of the quarter-final, got nearly a half in the semi-final, but they make light of it. And the way that they've managed the team, Mark Caulfield has come in now in defence. Victor Manzo came on the last day, got a goal, has been contributing big time. John Head has come in. So the thing is, they've got a winning platform, lads, and it's probably easier, and the 2 guys that are with us this evening are managers. It's easier to get your ideas across in a winning environment to young lads, to get them to buy into what you want to do, but you have to take your hats off to what Thomas have done, definitely.
And I think that's the point, Mattie Kenny, as we bring you in on that, like that winning mentality with St Thomas's. We've seen it in Galway in recent years in football with Corofin. Loads of teams come really close when it comes to county finals, but draws, you're almost guaranteed they'll win the replay. There's something about Thomas's in terms of their belief that they've built up in recent years as well.
Yeah, and look at the success brings that belief systems. But also watching Thomas's over the last number of years, you'd have to be very impressed with their style of play. I think over the last few years, they're the best team out there for how they use the ball and how they mind the ball. And there's a massive understanding there between all the players, and when they haven't got the ball, how they defend, how they close down the spaces, and then when they're on the ball, they're able to find one another and they're able to work some really good scores. And I think it's that style of play and that confidence to bring in the use of the ball. I think that has them standing out above the rest in the last 4 or 5 years. But on the flip side, looking at Loughrea this year and looking at the last couple of games against Sean again.
Sure.
That Loughrea are playing at the moment. They're working the ball out of the defence. They're very comfortable on the ball. They're as John said, they've pace all over the field, and I think after Thomas, they're the second best team out there now for how they build play. And Paul Hoban is settling there now to full back. They look solid there. Johnny Cohen, centre back most days, playing as well as ever, if not better than ever. And I'm really impressed with their 2-man full forward line they have there, with Martin McManus, who's having a great season, and Joe Mooney. So Loughrea seem to be playing with that two-man inside full forward line with Niall Keary, coming out the field a little bit, and Mark McManus and Joe Mooney, their movement across the line, their movement inside line is really impressive over this season, and they're two youngish guys, but they seem to be getting better in every game, and the likes of Jamie Ryan, then he's been doing it for the last good few years for Loughrea, but he's in great form as well, and some of his runs at pace through the middle has caused teams in this year's championship a lot of problems, and to be interesting to see how that goes on Sunday as well.
John, have you been surprised by Loughrea's progression through the championship, or if you can think back to the start of the Galway Senior Hurling Championship, were they one of the teams maybe in the back of your mind thought could do something?
Yes, to be honest about it. I mean, if you look at most counties now, the teams that are winning county titles tend to be urban orientated. I mean, I know now, for instance, in Tipperary, there are clubs contesting and winning county championships like Killadangan. When I was hurling with Laura, they weren't even a senior team. And I think down the road, clubs like Ormore Mary, Clarnbridge, Turlockmore, Loughrea, because they have big populations, they're going to have an inherent advantage. Now, obviously, St Thomas's are bucking that trend, or an archetypal rural club. But I just think it's the way the trend is going. I mean, look, when I came to Galway first, Kiltormer were such a power in Galway club hurling. Now they're struggling at intermediate and junior level. You have clubs like Mullia being amalgamated with Kiltormer at underage level. I mean, that prospect, if you mentioned that back in the early 80s, both clubs would have been, they would have been appalled at such a scenario. And I think that's my fear long term for club hurling, is that the big pockets of populations are going to dominate. But, in fairness to St Thomas's, they have pulled together a group of exceptional players around the same time. They have a lot of brothers involved. They're breaking the mold in that context. But going back to Loughrea, Jeffrey Linsky was involved with them there for the past couple of years, and when I was involved with Laura there for a couple of years there, we actually played Loughrea in a challenge game in Beacon, of all places. And they have been promising at underage level. They have a high-powered management team over them this year. Gavin Keary, Nigel Murray, Shane Cusick, Greg Kennedy, all very experienced people on the sideline. And I get the impression that whilst the outsiders outside the Loughrea dressing room are thinking Loughrea are in bonus territory, I believe that the mood in Loughrea dressing room is completely different. They've got to the final, no fluke about it. They've won every match along the way. They've been impressive. They turned the tables on Clarnbridge impressively in the county semi-final. And I believe they are primed for a right cut of this on Sunday. Now, obviously, the big question is, will their classy defender, Shane Morgan, be recovered in time from his hamstring injury to line out? He would be an incalculable loss to Loughrea. But as Sean mentioned earlier, St Thomas's have had their injury problems this year, notably Shane Cooney, and they've gone on with the job.
Yeah, and I suppose the one thing, and of course James Regan is also an injured out. He went off in that semi-final for St Thomas as well, and another integral part. And maybe even Regan is typical of this Thomas's team, as in the sense that, there's the standout players, but there's a number of players who are former county players who always do the business. But I suppose the one thing when you're analysing Thomas's, the standout player has been Conor Cooney, hasn't he, in the last few years? And I suppose, Mattie, I'll put this to you. Like, even in the semi-finals, Sarcy's put Joseph Cooney on him. Conor Cooney hit 10 points, 5 from play in that semi-final. He is a huge player for Thomas's, isn't it? That game against Clarnbridge, where they overturned Clarnbridge, and I think that was a seismic moment in their year after the defeat to Turlockmore. But Conor Cooney grabbed that game by the scruff of the neck, didn't he? He has to be marked, hasn't he?
He has, and Conor's been playing very well for the last number of years for Thomas's, and he's unbelievable hurling wrists. He's very much like Joe Kenny, which is free taking and which is his ability to score from distance. But man marking Conor Cooney, Connor drifts around the place. If you look at the last day against Saracens, those times he's back there on the half back line. If he's pitched as centre forward or somewhere along the half forward line, he doesn't stay in that position. So as he's drifting out, that's asking questions of the Loughrea management team. Like, do you go man mark him? Do you follow him? How far do you follow him out? And what kind of spaces does that leave up at the attacking end for Thomas's? But just a couple of things on Connor, like what a striker of the ball, he's as I say, from free and from play, any ball in hand, anything virtually within 90, 100 yards, it's a scoring option for him, and he's been delivering that consistently for Thomas over the last few seasons. But one other guy I was very impressed with the last day for Thomas's Sean was Éanna Burke inside. I thought his movement inside, against a good Clare Bridge full back line, and I thought his movement and his ability to get on ball and his ability to link play as well as get a few scores was critical to him as well. Himself and Oisin Flannery, they're kind of playing two up top a little bit as well. Was James Regan, as you say, he picked up an injury the last day, whether he'll be playing or not. We're not too sure, but I thought Éanna Burke had a really fine game as well. And Shane Cooney, Shane Cooney was really brilliant for Thomas last year at centre back. I thought he had an outstanding season for them. Over the last two games, he got some game time there. Will he start on Sunday, or will they hold him in the bench and bring him on? We don't know yet. But actually, Mark Caulfield at centre back the last day against Saracens, I thought he had a fine game, and this shows you a small club like Thomas's, they deserve a lot of credit. I'm not, small maybe in numbers, but big in what they've achieved. But Mark Caulfield, played a bit of junior over the last few years, but came into that Thomas's team there this year. Came in there centre back, and it was really impressive in Pierce Stadium the last day. So and he has Fintan Burke behind him. Then Keenan Mahoney, John Head, they're solid all over the field, and as we know, when they're attacking, David Burke, there's no better player playing club hurling or playing any type of hurling in Galway, for seeing where the danger is, how he can drift back into them positions, and how he can an out ball going forward, and when he's coming forward, then his use of the ball and picking out teammates is exceptional. So I'm certain Bernard Burke, they're a very, very strong midfield. So there's some really, I think, interesting matchups there. You say, Conor Cooney definitely, but on the upside, then Jamie Ryan, he's been doing it for Loughrea as well for the last number of years. What they do, they have this Thomas's management team have the similar issues. What do we do with Jamie? Do we man mark him? Do we follow him out the field? Then Niall Keary comes out in that position. So Loughrea's movement is very, very good. But the two things that's kind of intriguing me going into the game is the battle between the two full back lines versus the two full forward line. Joe Mooney, Martin McManus up top, probably Fintan Burke, Keane Mahoney maybe picking them up, and then down the other end, Éanna Burke and Oisin Flannery, Paul Rubin, Oisin Kyle, as you say, Shane Morgan. I'm not too sure whether they'll be playing or not. But the two inside lines versus the two full back lines, I think, will be intriguing on Sunday.
And I suppose the other thing, and I'd throw to both of you, right? And I remember watching the league final, and Loughrea defeated Turrickmore and that in Athenry. Seems a long time ago now, but that game plan, as you both said, is well structured now with Loughrea. But the dilemma is, right, and Matt, you started touching on it there. We know that Jamie Ryan has a license to roam. We know that Anthony Burns and the other wing goes out as well, right? The two boys are inside, the two big boys, Mooney and McManus. So we'd say Turlock seemed to trust the structure of the team in the sense that they didn't really man-mark Jamie Ryan. He got 5 points from play. Martin McManus got 4 points inside, right? Caused trouble. Joseph Mooney was held scoreless. The flip side of it then, as Clarenbridge, I thought they pulled Shane Bannon out kind of as a man-marker initially. They put Oisin Salmon on him then. So they curbed Jamie Ryan to some degree in that he didn't score. But inside, Joe Mooney hit 1-1 and Martin McManus hit 2-2. So what are you going to do if you're Thomas's now? Their experience, obviously, but you know what's coming here. But do you go with these guys and let your structure suffer a little bit, or do you trust the structure of your team to hold and let these guys just do their normal thing? John, we'll throw that one to you.
Yeah, well, it's a classic dilemma, Sean, for managements up and down the country. Do you stick or twist when you have the opposition giving players a license to roam? Look, nobody knows how this game is going to evolve in the first 10 minutes. I was looking at the long-term forecast for Sunday, and there's plenty of rain about, unfortunately, at the moment. Now, hopefully that will change. And you could have a very wet day in Salthill, and suddenly all bets are off. But it's just that I trust St Thomas's to do what they have to do in county finals. They have been there many times before, and they've always managed to find a way to win. The big question is, even though Loughrea deserve to be in the county final on Sunday, what impact will the occasion have? And obviously, it's a big deal out in the town. Supporters are animated. Suddenly, players are being asked about things that nobody cared about 6 months ago. They're coming under pressure. So you trust St Thomas's to deliver under pressure. The question is, can Loughrea do the same? Now, I know, Sean, you were at the Turlough Loughrea quarter-final, and in that game, Turlough asked questions of Loughrea, and in fairness to them, they came up, Johnny Cohen and company came up with the answers. But county final day, even though people say it's just another game, it's a different feel to it. There's more pressure, there's bigger crowds, and there's a lot more excitement in the respective parishes. And Sean, you have seen, as I have, countless times at county finals up and down the country, where there was big expectations behind the team and they flopped. So we know that's not going to happen to St Thomas's. We know that they are going to produce a performance because they have done it so many times before. Now, I expect Loughrea to be hugely competitive, but the big question is, will they perform to the level that they are capable of, simply because it's county final day?
And the other question, obviously, is the venue then as well, John, as you alluded to. Like, Thomas's have loads of experience in Pearse Stadium. Loughrea, not so much, Sean, have they, over in the recent championships?
They haven't, but I think the stadium will still suit Loughrea. I think, in fairness, and that's another debate for another day, I think that looking in the last few weeks at other venues around the country, the Gaelic grounds in Limerick, some of the other venues, they seem to have far better playing surfaces than we have. And certainly right now, I think Pearse Stadium, I know a lot of people don't see it as the easiest venue to get to, but I think it has the best surface, so you go with that. And I don't think that will inconvenience Loughrea at all.
It's more the wind factor and
it's
how
the
it
wind
can spoil a game sometimes as well.
Now, the other thing you have to say, Ollie, here is defensively, if you have a good defence, it goes a long way in terms of reaching a championship final and hopefully winning it, I suppose. Loughrea have, of the teams that are left, the best defensive record this year. They've only conceded, I think, it's 6 goals. But in 3 of the last 4 games, they haven't conceded a goal. Thomas's have conceded big. They've conceded 10 goals in this year's championship, scored 13. But significantly, they haven't conceded a goal in the last 2 games. So I suppose, Mattie, in the morning, if you're given a team, if you're defensively solid for both of these teams, is probably a lot of the reason why they are where they are too, isn't it?
There's no doubt, Sean, in sports, whether it is, soccer, football, rugby, in our case, hurling, all great teams are built on a strong defence, it's grand to be scoring freely up front, but if you're conceding freely, it's not good at the back end. All great teams are defensively set up very, very solidly. But then it is, as I said at the start, what really impressed me about Thomas's over the last number of years and Loughrea this year is how well they use the ball, how well they mind the ball, and how well they build coming out of defence, build into attack. And so if we're talking about the 2 inside lines, as I said, Joe Mooney, Mark McManus have been scoring freely the last 2 days. So if they're closed down, then they also have the weapons further out the field with Jamie Ryan, the Hanrahans, Dylan Shaughnessy, Niall Carey, Anthony Burns. They're capable of scoring as well. Like Tiernan Kildeen playing very well at midfield for them. And if you look at Thomas's, they're also the same. They also can hurt you inside. And we talked earlier about Conor Cooney, David Burke, even Dara Burke. These guys can also score from the middle third. So the good teams are not one-dimensional. Like, they're not always hitting the full forward line, or they're not always carrying the ball, they're not always shooting for distance. They're able to mix it up. And it's definitely, I think this final is you can really say it is the experiences of Thomas's versus the youth and this of Loughrea. Like, there's a lot of these Loughrea boys have been played under 20 this year, and as John said at the very start, Loughrea have a lot of pace in their game. Going into Pearse Stadium, it's a big pitch. It's as well as Thomas having the experience of county finals in there. I don't think it's going to do Loughrea any harm either. I think it's got a big pitch. It'll suit their style of play. It'll suit their pace of players. And I think we're going to have a classic final to look forward to. And once the weather is reasonably good, I think this will be a really, really good game. And I think with two teams that's playing a really nice brand of hurling at the moment.
One thing, John, of course, that always adds to a classic final, and we don't get too many because there's so much at stake, is the refereeing. So it's a big day for Shane Hines as well. But when I look around the country, John, in the last couple of weeks, and I see so many matches, with rancour in it and with, red cards and sendings off, how big a part is the fact that this is a county final being played towards the end of November, where conditions are difficult, these rucks develop, there's a loose pull, and then somebody reacts and there's a push and a couple of handbags, and before you know it, it's one in, all in. How big a job is Shane Hines ahead of him at the weekend?
Oh, it's a massive responsibility on Shane, but he is an experienced match official at this stage. Like, he's refereed inter-county matches, and he's a former player himself, which, I think it does give you an inherent advantage because you know what to look out for. Obviously, if weather conditions are poor on Sunday, there's a greater opportunity for rancour and physicality and robust exchanges and stuff like that. And it is unfortunate that there have been a number of incidents up and down the country which have brought the GA into disrepute. Players losing their cool, mentors losing their cool, and unfortunately at the weekend we saw spectators losing their cool at a Leinster club game. And I'd imagine Shane, having played the game, he'll be anxious to let the match flow as much as possible. It's a big day for him, and I think spectators go to matches and they don't even see the referee or the linesmen or the umpires until there's some controversy. And all those individuals are preparing diligently for the county final on Sunday, as are referees and linesmen and umpires up and down the county, and we take them for granted. I mean, they're volunteers. They're putting an awful lot of effort into it. Only for them, the matches wouldn't be able to go ahead. We couldn't police them ourselves, the players or the management, or to be chaos altogether. But I wish Shane the very best of luck. I wish both teams all the best. I'm a former manager of Loughrea. I'd have a soft spot for them. I remember we played Athenry in a 1998 county semi-final. We only lost by a couple of points. Gavin Keary was playing that day. Greg Kennedy was also involved, and Nigel Murray was in goals. But I look at St Thomas's. I go back to the game against Ballyhale that Sean referenced earlier in Thurles last January. It was the best performance I have seen from St Thomas's, and only for two outrageous goals from TJ Reid at the end of the game, they would have been back in the All-Ireland Club final. They're desperate to get back there. I mean, they have already done something that Athenry, Sarsfields, Kiltormer, Portumna couldn't do. To put a string of county title successes together. They don't have the same imposing track record at All-Ireland level as those clubs. So they're really keen to prove themselves at the highest stage. It's unfortunate. I think the All-Ireland Club Championship is more competitive now than it has ever been. We have Ballygunner, the reigning championship, Ballyhale still there, you have Piercy. So it's a very difficult title to win now. And I think the proof of that is that no Galway team has managed to win the All-Ireland Club title in, I think it must be nearly 10 years at this stage. So St Thomas's, they will see Sunday as a sort of a passport to get back to Thurles or Croke Park later on in the year or in the new year, and they will do everything in their power for Loughrea not to stop.
I think on that as well, and Mattie, I think Kenneth Burke has done a great job as well, and I think one guy, Tommy Fitzgerald, has come in the last 2 years, and it's like as if there's been an evolution, Mattie, to a degree, isn't there? You notice kind of things on puck outs. Cathal Burke, for instance, has been scoring from kind of planned puck out moves. There's a few different variations to their game as well, isn't there? Like, they are learning and they are putting extra things into their game, aren't they, as well?
Very much so, Sean. And this Thomas's team, I believe, I think Loughrea, the last time they were back in, the last time they were in the county finals, 2013, I think, which is going 10 seasons ago. Like, and since then, St Thomas have won six county titles. So they're a very well-oiled machine. And as you say, there was different management setups along the way, and one evolves into the other, and there's no great noise or drama out of them. Like, they get their work done very, very quietly. But there's definitely that culture or ethos is constantly there, and you're correct to play a very smart brand of hurling. Like, Ger Kelly in goals, like, he's always looking for them options, and then obviously the players outfield are giving them options. But the last couple of years under Kenneth, this team is as we say, a very experienced. It's not their first rodeo going in here on Sunday, and they will perform to a good level. And as John McIntyre was saying there, like, we have to see, can Loughrea bring their game, which I'm sure they will. On their side, while they're very useful, they have a very, very experienced management team. Like Tommy Kelly, worked with Tommy in both Dublin and in Coola, and along with obviously Greg, he was coached and backbone that Coola team to 2 All-Irelands, and as John said, Gavin Keary, hugely experienced coach as well. So there's a lot of experience on the sideline for Loughrea. So it's there, as I said, on the field there's interesting matchups, but also on both management teams. Thomas's have the experience, they have the know-how, and but Loughrea have good experience on the sideline as well. So both management teams will be tested. As we say, both Thomas and Loughrea are capable of setting up differently. They're capable of approaching the game and adapting to the conditions and adapting to the whatever's going on in the game. And both management teams will have a role to play, and see how that is transpiring on the day, and switch the systems or switch the players, and even key substitutions. Like Loughrea have a lot of young talent on the bench, but we even see there last week in against Clare Bridge, like when the likes of Victor and Manzo came on there, like the impact team had, like as we say, Shane Cooney, did they start him or did they bring him on? So there's a lot of interesting intrigue in this game on Sunday, and we're all looking forward to it massively.
We very much are, and we're intrigued because everything we talked about could go out the window after a couple of minutes with a couple of red cards, or who knows what may happen. But we wish the teams well, as the two lads have said already. Thanks to Mattie and John for chatting to us. I'm sure you're going to be enjoying the match on Sunday, lads, as well. So it's 1:30 on Sunday, Sean. It's clashing with Moy Cullen's match against Strokestown in Tuam. So we'll be streaming. We'll be streaming the football game for you listeners live on galwaybfm.ie. But again, there will be a crowd in Pearse Stadium. There will be a great atmosphere, and if the weather is anyways decent at all, we're very much looking forward to a cracker. You'll have 2 Cyrils with you as well, Sean, in commentary as well, bringing you.
We can't get it wrong. So
all of the opinions that we were looking for. So all we could do is wish both teams the very best of luck, and whoever wins, as you rightly say, will be out the weekend of the 17th, 18th of December.
And of course, a shout out as well to the Jubilee team. It's the Sarsfields team of 1997, which is always a nice part of county final day. We'd love to keep the lads longer. It is one of the things that you don't have the double header. You have the Jubilee team them kind of put in at half time, but certainly it's a nice to have them honoured, and maybe we'll talk some stage about maybe bringing it back a little bit.
And a word as well about the Ballygar lads, who are in Connacht final action.
Absolutely, what a year they're having! What a year they're having, and may it continue for them, doing an awful lot of good right things. That Junior 1 championship is a big championship as well. As we said a few weeks ago, they're now intermediate, which is a huge prize for them, and wish them the best of luck as well. Up against Easky from Sligo, and I think there's plenty of lads in Ballygar with knowledge of the Sligo scene, from what I know as well. There's quite a few of them. They'll have plenty of inside knowledge there. That's it from Over the Line Extra. Thanks to Mattie and John for joining us. From myself and Sean, enjoy the county final. We'll see you next week.
Line Extra, your weekly Galway GAA podcast with Ollie Turner and Sean Walsh in association with